Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name's Danielle and I'm the owner of Damn Fancy Creations and the Drunk Flamingo Glitter. Today we are going to be making a fun coastal beach inspired tumbler. I got this idea from this cool cake that I found on Pinterest and thought it would be fun to turn this into a tumbler. I am going to go over all of these steps listed, but as always, if I leave something out or if you guys need clarification on something, please ask in the comments and I will come back and check. We are going to go ahead and get started on this fun tutorial, but if you guys want to check out my other content, please feel free to check out my tutorial group or our Damn Fancy tribe, and of course our Drunk Flamingo Glitter group. All of those are going to be linked in the description. All right guys, let's get started. Alright guys, so as normal, we're going to start with a prepped tumbler. This is a 32 plump that I got from the Steel Magnolias. I do have a discount code down below if you guys want to check them out. I'm going to be using a piece of linen. I have my little images already printed out and my electrical tape. So I am just going to measure my tumbler right now and kind of section it off into 3 even sections. And I went ahead and cut my tape in 2-inch sections. These are going to be our bricks. So I am just going to start with applying our bricks or our electrical tape on our tumbler. And I am just leaving a small amount of space in between each piece of tape. And I'm just going to do this all the way around the cup. And when I get to the last section, I am just going to cut it a little bit smaller. I wasn't, too concerned with them being extremely even. This is definitely going to have like an old rustic feel to it with crumbling bricks. So of course they're not all going to be the same. And then when I start my second layer of tape, I'm going to place it in between the line above. And I realized that these were perfectly even and I did not want that. So I went back and moved the first piece over a little bit just so all of my tape lines would be a little staggered. So now they're all staggered. And I'm just going to trim this piece with my cutter. And it still wasn't quite short enough. And that space was a little bit larger than I wanted, so I just added that little scrap piece and just made that little gap a little smaller. I don't think it really would have mattered after I applied the tape, but so I am just going to do the same thing all the way down the cup, and then we're also going to do the exact same thing on the bottom half of the tumbler. If you guys feel like you have the hang of this, you guys can skip ahead about 30 seconds, but I know a lot of you guys enjoy watching me do things or feel like you want to see how I complete the entire thing, so I am just going to let this play for those of you that are more visual learners and want to watch all of the steps. So now we are going to start on our bottom. And I did end up needing just a little bit more tape, so I just rolled a little bit more out. And again, just cutting it in 2-inch strips. So now that this step is complete, we are going to go back and paint it and distress everything, make it look kind of like the old seawalls that you would see. So I am just getting out different paints that I have. I believe this one is Ecru and Sand from Pop of Color Paints. I am just going to use an old bristle brush, and we're just going to really kind of paint in between those lines. And I did open up some terracotta and added a little bit of that in there. And I'm just kind of making sure that all of the little gaps are filled. And trying to get some multicolors in there just so it's not such a single colored line in between our distressed bricks. And I am going with my bristle brush on the bottom of the cup just to distress it a little bit as well. And now I am going in with a little bit of a darker brown. This is just a dark brown acrylic paint. And I'm going in with one of my little round brushes I have. It's a very coarse brush. And this is just adding some texture to the lines. I wasn't quite sure how this was actually going to look, but it does give a nice contrast, and it does kind of give the appearance of crumbling bricks or stone, which is what I was going for. And I'm really just kind of dabbing this in between the cracks. And not on every line, just the majority of them. And it's not like a solid dotting, it's just kind of getting a little bit of that color in the cracks. Not too heavy-handed. And I am immediately just going to start peeling that tape off. I will point out to you that this spray paint was completely dry when I applied this tape, and applying the tape on my little cutting mat first did remove some of the tack from the electrical tape, so it was easier to peel off. It wasn't peeling off any of my spray paint or anything like that. In the past, I have forgotten to remove some of the tack, and the electrical tape ripped some of my spray paint off because it is a lot stronger and stickier than painter's tape. So I do recommend removing the tack before you apply it. And once we remove the top half tape, we're going to go and remove all of the bottom half tape. And then we are going to add some color to these bricks and really help them appear weathered. All right, so now that all of our paint, or our tape, sorry, is removed, we are just going to go in with, again, our coarse brush. I like to use coarse brushes. These are just chip brushes, bristle brushes, whatever, that I got at Walmart. I got a pack of multiple sizes for I think like $6. And I like using these brushes because you can really see each little stroke, and it just gives a really nice distressed feel. So I am just starting with the same colors that we already used, which is sand, ecru, and terracotta pop of color paints. And I am going over some bricks a little bit more just to distress them a little bit more than others. So after I applied these colors, I let them dry. I was pretty happy with them, but I decided to add a little bit more of a green color to help bring out the colors in the image that I was using. So I already did this. I didn't film it because I didn't know how it would turn out. So I really just got a sponge and dipped it in some different colors. I did use some white. I used a green gray acrylic paint, and this is what it turned out. I really liked how it looked. Using the sponge just gave a little bit more of a distressed look. It kind of reminded me of moss or algae or ocean stuff just growing on the brick. So I really like how it turned out. So now we are going to use our linen. I thought this would be really fun to use on a tumbler. Believe it or not, I have only done like 2 fabric tumblers, and it was 5 years ago or more when I first started doing tumblers. One thing I will say is do not fray the middle edges like I did. The top and bottom I did want frayed, and then I don't know why I frayed this part. I was like, oh my, I did not mean to do that. So I ended up having to cut that frayed part off, which I probably didn't have to, but it just made more work for me, as you will see, because then I had to fill a little piece of that fabric in the gap. So be better than I am. Think before you cut, or before you fray, I shall say. And this linen fabric was just some leftover fabric that I had when I was doing my sublimation hat patches. I just had a little bit left, and it was the perfect size for a tumbler wrap. And to apply our fabric, we're just going to use Mod Podge and a regular brush. I am just putting I would say a decent layer of Mod Podge. I don't want it super thick, but I do want it to stay damp so I can apply my fabric and it will adhere well. So I am just smoothing out any wrinkles. I don't want any kind of wrinkly spots in my fabric. So I'm just applying Mod Podge to about half of the tumbler. Then I am pressing it down really, really well just to get out any air bubbles. And then I'm going to apply a little bit more Mod Podge. And again, I'm just kind of smoothing it down, making sure that fabric is attached really well to the cup. And then my cup cradle came apart. So I had to fix that really quick. Nothing ever goes perfect when I'm trying to film. So now that I have it on my cup cradle, I am just kind of pulling that fabric together as close as it will go. But since I had to cut off that little piece that I accidentally frayed, I did have to go cut a little tiny piece. And this is where my little framed image is going to go. So I wasn't super concerned with how it was going to look, since the majority of this spot was going to be covered anyway. And I will say that once I epoxied, it did smooth everything out really well, and I could hardly tell that this was even cut. But I just cut a little tiny piece, and we're just smoothing it right down in the center. I am just kind of feeding it into that little crack. And then we're going to Mod Podge over everything. So I was just holding my little frame up to see if it would cover it all, and it did. So I was pretty happy. So for fabric tumblers, if you guys are unfamiliar with them, you have to seal them several times with Mod Podge just to make sure that everything is covered and sealed really well. Because if the epoxy gets on the fabric in spots that are not sealed well, then you will have kind of a wet look. The coverage will not appear even, so you do have to seal it several times. It does not have to be with Mod Podge. If you have something like Quick Seal from Artistry Epoxy or a different sealer that you like, you can also use that. I don't prefer Mod Podge. It was just the closest thing I had on hand, and I know that it's probably the most familiar product. I'm sure everybody watching has Mod Podge. So I am just sealing it really well. I'm really kind of pushing the Mod Podge into those little loose fibers where I frayed the edges, because I do want to make sure that all of those are sealed as well. And after this dries, I will do another layer of Mod Podge. I think I did 3 or 4 total layers, and they were decent layers. They weren't super thin, they weren't super thick, but everything was definitely covered nicely. And once you apply all of your Mod Podge layers and it is dried completely, we are going to go ahead and do 2 layers of epoxy, and then we will be ready for our next step. So here is our tumbler after we epoxied. I used Artistry's 1-to-1 Fast Set. I really like that epoxy. I do have a discount code down below in case you guys want to check it out. So we're going to apply our images. I made mine about 3.5 inches. Then I made another circle that was just under 3.5 inches. I believe it was 3.25. And then the second ring that you see, that is going to go inside of the first circle, or the first little ring. Because I just kind of wanted my little beach picture to be framed the same way the image on the cake was framed. And I thought about using some type of twine or something like that, but I opted to go for this kind of mint green vinyl because I felt like that would bring out the teal in the beach picture as well as the paint that is on our bricks. And of course I had a little wrinkle in my frame. I am just smoothing it out. And both of these vinyls, I believe the textured vinyl is the Cricut brand textured vinyl, and the green came from my local vinyl supplier, which is JSI, or now known as Perfect Press HTV. They're located in Norcross, Georgia. If you guys are local, you should check them out. I've been going to them since even before I did tumblers, back when I did HTV shirts. That's who I use. They have changed over the years, but it's really cool to see them grow. But they always have really great deals on glittered vinyl, basic colors, everything you need. And this image I just printed on printable vinyl. I like Cricut brand printable vinyl the best. I have used several different brands and I always just prefer Cricut. I think it prints well, it cuts well. And once I have my design centered, I'm just going to peel off the backing of that printable vinyl, and then we're going to center our image in the linen. And in case you guys did not know, you do not need to seal printable vinyl. It does not bleed under epoxy, or at least the Cricut brand does not. So we are just going to center our image. I'm trying to get the beach horizon as straight as I can. And then we're going to smooth down the center. And then we're going to smooth down the left side. And then we're going to smooth down the right side. Just kind of making sure that no air bubbles are getting trapped underneath there. We don't want any air bubbles visible. And once we get this on, we are going to apply our flowers. And I will try to explain how I cut the flowers. What I basically did was, when I created this little circle frame in the Silhouette software, I grouped my flowers together and then I sliced them. I don't know what it's called, or I guess it would be called divide in Silhouette. Slice you could probably use for Cricut. So I basically just hit divide and it separates the flowers from the frame and kind of cuts out this perfect little circle. There are probably YouTube videos on how to do this if you're unsure. I do have a YouTube video up of Silhouette basics on my YouTube channel. I think that I cover this in that video. I will also drop the link where I purchased these flowers, or where I downloaded them. I have a subscription to Creative Fabrica, and that's where I got these flowers. These again are also printed on printable vinyl, and I am just going to apply them to the frame. And we're going to smooth everything out as we apply it. This one did get off just slightly, but I was able to go back and trim it a little bit with my blade, which I will also show you guys how I do. And now we're going to apply our top little flower. So it is just slightly overlapping the frame, which I did not want. I wanted it to look like the flowers were kind of popping out of the frame. So I am going to go trim this little piece. I was debating on overlapping these flowers here, but decided not to. I think it would still be super cute, but I decided to just kind of add these to the top of the tumblers. I'm just getting all of these little pieces of paper out from my design. That is one thing I hate about cutting Monstera leaves, is there are so many little holes in them. You have to weed so much. So I really almost put it here, but I decided to add them to the top up here. I thought that would be cute just to add a little bit more interest to the top of the cup since there wasn't too much up there besides just the bricks. So I'm just trimming these with my scissors for now, but I will go back and cut them with my blade. That is just so my hand doesn't get stuck to them as I'm applying the rest of my decals. So now we are going to apply our vinyl decal. I thought this was really cute. The sound of the sea heals my soul. I thought it was a really cute quote. This is a design that I just came up with in silhouette. I will put it on the website for you guys if y'all want to purchase. And we are just going to use our transfer tape. I prefer this one with lines. It just helps me really get everything lined up and straight. It is also linked down below. And I'm going to apply this to the opposite side of my tumbler. When I was creating this decal, I did measure to make sure it would fit in between the two flowers that are on the front frame. And I did want it to kind of fit in between my linen, so I did size it accordingly. Obviously, if your linen piece is going to be shorter or longer, you can make your decal larger or smaller. So I'm just making sure everything is straight here. And I am just smoothing everything down before I remove the transfer tape. And now I am going to add one more little floral decal to the bottom of this quote, again, just to give the backside a little bit more visual details. And I'm just centering it with the decal, just eyeballing it. And this one had a lot of really skinny little pieces, so the backing got stuck to a couple little pieces. So I am just kind of smoothing everything out, getting all those little white backings off with my tweezers. If you guys do not have tweezers like this, I do suggest getting them. I think I have like 4 different pair, but they really help and they come in handy when you're trying to do detailed work like this that I can't even get with my nails or anything like that. And some of these little pieces were so small that they did kind of rip when I was trying to remove the decal from the backing. So I just saved the pieces and I just added them in to where they are supposed to go. So I am just going to finish up these little decals. Some of these little pieces got kind of cut off when I was removing the backing, but you can always just save them and apply them with tweezers. And after I get all of my decals on my tumbler, I will show you guys how I trim around the top edge just to clean up those decals. I just do it with my blade. This particular tumbler has already been sanded at the rim. I don't think I filmed that for this video. I typically do. Y'all can go back and watch one of my more recent tutorials, and you will see that I just take a 60 or 80 grit sanding block and just sand around that top rim, which will ensure a very clean rim. You will not have broken seals or anything like that. Sanding exposes about 1 to 2 millimeters of the stainless steel tumbler so that when we apply our final few layers of epoxy, we know that it is going to adhere very well. So after we get all of our decals placed and cleaned up, I am just going to take this straight to my turner and apply 2 more layers of epoxy. Anytime I have decals on my cup, I do like to apply 2 layers of epoxy just so those decals are good and covered. When I'm using printable vinyl, I do not seal it with anything. I mentioned that earlier, but just to reiterate, printable vinyl does not need to be sealed. It is not going to bleed or anything like that. And once your final 2 layers of epoxy are on, your cup will be complete. And here are some finished pictures for you guys. I just love how this tumbler turned out. I think it gives off a vintage coastal cottage vibe that I love so much. Definitely different from other beach cups I saw. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. If you enjoyed this tutorial or learned something new, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Don't forget to catch the next video coming up that was picked just for you. As always, if you're looking for more tips, tricks, or tutorials, be sure to check out my tutorial group on Facebook or our Damn Fancy tribe. Both are linked in the description. Thanks for watching.